Thank you, everyone. As we kickstart this edition of EVConIndia, I, on behalf of Blue Circle, would like to take a few moments to thank all esteemed partners for putting their shoulders to the event. A special thanks to our main sponsors, Lognan Materials and Hero Electric, knowledge partner Alvarez and Marcel for creating the white paper, investment partner and Indian Angel Network for co-authoring the Startup Dev program, accelerator partner Huddle, and real estate partner GLL. It's been an absolute pleasure working with their teams and getting their valuable support. Also, a big shout out to all my team members for working all the hours to pull this off together. Welcome, everyone. Thank you, distinguished audience, for joining us, most of whom are COs, CXOs, and senior leaders. Many among them are our members and are repeat visitors to our webinars. This is very encouraging and motivates us to provide even higher levels of dialogue. For those of you who are new with us today, India-based startup Blue Circle is the world's first sector-specific opportunity and knowledge exchange networking app for business leaders. It is somewhat like sector-specific LinkedIn for senior leaders, a space to have meaningful conversations, connect with over 15,000 plus rapidly growing community of like-minded leaders from India and across the globe, exchange high-quality curated content, and access business opportunities across these sectors, such as e-mobility, renewable energy, real estate, healthcare, and many more. Those leaders among you who are interested, please join us. I will share the link to the app in the chat section, and will soon be sending out invitations to our new guests post today's discussion. Now, coming back to today's discussion, it is a privilege and a pleasure to welcome our distinguished panelists who are handpicked because of the think input and the rich experience they bring in. Without further ado, I'm pleased to introduce Ms. Monika Mikac, Board Member, QEV Technologies, Mr. Christie Fernandez, Founder and CEO of Soorya, Mr. Ankush Raina, VP Battery Technology, Lognan Materials, and Mr. Barnik Chitran Maitra. He's the Managing Partner of Arthur D. Little India. He's the Chair and Moderator for this session. The discussion will revolve around the topic, obstacles and opportunities in electrifying four-wheelers, ride-hailing vehicles. Now I request Barnik to please begin the session. Thank you so much.
Thanks for the introduction. It's a pleasure to be at EVCon. I think today's topic is a very interesting topic. We've looked at electrification, and India, by the way, is one of the pioneers in a few segments. But the topic for today is both at the intersection of two very important trends. One is electrification and the other is sharing or ride-hailing. We at Arthur D. Little were privileged to do two research reports recently, which got launched in June. And there we've acknowledged the potential for India to be one of the global leaders in electric vehicles, right? Both across all segments. In fact, in terms of an interesting statistic, most countries tend to electrify the top end of their vehicle ecosystem. India has been very successful in actually electrifying its three-wheelers. I think in the last quarter, the electrification statistic for three-wheelers in India was more than 50%. Similarly, there's a huge opportunity for e-bikes, where currently the electrification is around 2 or 3%, but that can easily be 40 to 50%. I think next there is the commercial vehicle segment, where there is a lot of investments in light commercial vehicles, last mile delivery to electrify, and last but probably the least is actually the four-wheelers, right, where the economics in terms of the upfront cost and also the charging infrastructure may entail the fact that they may be the slowest to adopt four-wheelers. In this context, I think ride sharing is a very interesting segment to look at. In a lot of other markets where plug-in hybrids were available, a lot of ride-sharing vehicles quickly transformed into adopting public plug-in hybrids. If you go to most big cities around the world, notably London, Singapore, you'll see a lot of Toyota Priuses and a lot of hybrids who are actually using ride-hailing services. I think the challenge in India is that the ride-hailing services tend to use ICE engines, and in India, we are going to probably bypass the plug-in hybrid stage of evolution and go directly to battery electric vehicles. So in that context, that's an important thing to bear, that in India, there will be unlikely to be very high adoption of plug-in hybrids. And then the unique context of India. Indian roads are difficult. If you look at most Uber and Ola apps, their owners actually tend to ply the vehicles for nearly 24 hours in a day. If you look at big cities like Delhi, Bombay, there is probably 500 to 600 kilometers is the average usage. which falls outside the parameters of the standard battery ranges today. So it's a reasonably difficult topic in terms of the opportunities in electrification of ride hailing, but I think when there is a problem or an obstacle, there are companies who get together to try to solve it. That's why we have a very distinguished panel who represent three different parts of the ecosystem. I think there is Christie, who represents a startup who's trying to solve this exact problem for India. We have Log9, who's actually a battery manufacturer and probably has a bird's eye view to the central problem of charging range and other solutions. And then we have Monika, who will bring to us a rich experience of what she's seen in other markets and also is both an operator and investor. With that, I'll get straight to the questions. We'll start upfront with a little bit of a discussion on the shared mobility ecosystem today. So, Monika, if you don't mind me posing the first question to you, what's your view on the growth of electrification of shared mobility across the world? Have you seen any markets where you've seen some leadership examples, and what's the status of the market today?
So I would say when it comes to mobility in general, that we are seeing a huge polarization happening. When it comes to vehicles that are being used like with private customers, I think that this way will develop only for, let's say, a luxury segment. So this is the segment that is going to stay in the future, while everything else is slowly going to the shared mobility. Because if you consider like private vehicles, 90% of the time, they are just, standing and not being used. So in that way, of course, there are always going to be fans that like really driving, that like the fast driving, that enjoy the cars. And this luxury segment of the vehicles is going to stay. But when it comes to everything else, I really believe that, the shared mobility is the next big thing. And what I have considered that shared mobility is really happening in so far when it comes to who is, let's say, at forefront, mostly it's happening in the developed countries, but in countries like Europe or in countries like America. But when it comes to emerging markets, I noticed that the segment that is really growing when it comes to electric mobility, that's a segment of public mobility. So buses, this way of transportation, this is, I believe, when it comes to emerging markets, the first one that is going to go electric. While when it comes to shared mobility, there are different challenges that have to be untangled in the emerging markets for the shared mobility to really work.
Cool.
And to grow.
Thanks, Monika. Ankush, if I want to look at your perspective as a battery manufacturer, are you seeing the adoption of electrification of shared mobility? Are people asking for it? Are there solutions out there which people are exploring? All of us in India, or at least people who live in the northern part of the country, are probably already exposed to Blue Smart, right, which is one of the exclusive electric vehicle shared platform. But if you can talk a little bit about what you're seeing, what do you think Blue Smart is doing? Are there any other interesting players? And as a battery manufacturer, right, where do you see this segment today?
So, having me here. So, starting with the opportunities and the adoption, right? So, what we can foresee is definitely there is a lot of adoption like being done for the shared mobility specific to the four-wheeler segment. So if you divide the segment into like two different categories, so one can be like the cargo vehicles that you have, and another one can be the passenger vehicles. So definitely there were some existing business models that were already there for IC engines, be it like for cargo or passengers, and which in India we can see we are successfully adopting to that. These two segments specifically for passengers to start with. Cargo is another segment that is coming up this year onwards, as we can see a lot of OEM like vehicles starting from the very new chassis and understanding the segments and then getting the vehicles out in the market. So we can definitely foresee these things happening in India. As you mentioned, Blue Smart, and then we have lithium, and we have few more small companies as well, which are not scaled up like lithium or Blue Smart, but they're also trying to come into the market with the shared mobility. Talking about on the cargo side, we have a few players who have not basically built a complete vehicle from the scratch, but they are trying to retrofit these vehicles, which are like existing four-wheeler platforms. Specifically, like Northway is one of them, eTrio is one of them, Self Propulsion is one of them. These people are also trying to work completely on developing this ecosystem. The Tata is also in the game, right? So waiting for Tata vehicle as well to come into the market. And overall, we can see there is a good market coming up for both the segments. As we can see, the Blue Smart has grown too much. So when they started, it was around like 150 vehicles that they had in their fleet. Now they are coming up to around 13,000 vehicles in their fleet. So you can see the scale that has been there. And then now when the Tata also comes into the game, so definitely there will be a huge push in the complete market segment.
So, Christie, coming to you, you're an entrepreneur and you're looking to disrupt this space. So, again, two relevant questions to you. I think if you look at emerging markets, where do you see the opportunity? And in conjunction with that, what's the vision for Soorya and how are you planning to address this opportunity for shared mobility electrification?
Thanks, Barnik. There's a huge opportunity for transportation, for mobility in the developing countries. One reason is that public transport is, inefficient, or it is, not adequate, and the populations are booming in cities. Demand is increasing, and most of the cities are also not so well planned. So public transport is of course available today, but last mile mobility is not available. So because last mile mobility is not available, most people tend to have their own mobility, own personal mobility. And that's why you see a proliferation of two-wheelers in most of these developing countries. But they're not very convenient, and they're not very comfortable. Fortunately, today, many of the cities have good metros that are being implemented. Buses are also available. And many of the buses in cities are now getting converted into electric buses. So last mile mobility is I think, an area that needs to be focused on. We need to have the right kind of products for last mile mobility. In countries like India, of course, we have the three-wheelers, which is very unique to a certain geography. And they have been electrified, and they have been proliferating because the running costs for these vehicles are very low compared to petrol or diesel vehicles. But the segment that we are focused on is the ride hailing and the ride sharing segment. That's also a growing market. It's a big market, but there are no vehicles purpose built for this segment. So even today, passenger cars are used as a fleet vehicle, but passenger cars are not built as a taxi. So they're not, very efficient in that fashion. Again, when you look at passenger cars, most of them are long distance vehicles. So, but most of the ride hailing and ride sharing is short distance. And there are no short distance, vehicles built for this market. So our focus is the ride hailing, the ride sharing, the short distance travel segment. And our focus is developing countries where most of the roads are congested, the speeds are low. The average speed is below 40 kilometers per hour. And what we realized is that if we have to build a purpose-built vehicle, we can't go the way the developed world is going with electric vehicles focused on speed, range, and fast charging. We need to be developing a vehicle that is affordable. And to make a vehicle affordable, that means it has to be right-sized. It has to be, right spec. It has to have, zero downtime for charging, which is a challenge for a fleet segment. Because like you mentioned earlier, most of the vehicles, they sweat the vehicles almost 24 hours. So they travel long distance, but most of them are short distances, but over 24 hours. So designing the vehicle has been the biggest challenge for us. So we needed to develop, design a vehicle which had zero downtime for charging, which was affordable. So we could not solve the problem of range by having a larger battery pack, because the larger battery pack means that the vehicle is heavier, you need a bigger motor, and then the performance efficiency comes down. So we have a very unique vehicle architecture, which has a fixed plus swappable battery architecture, which means that you have multiple charging options. So you can charge it the traditional way, or you can swap batteries. And we also have a solar roof, which gives about 20 kilometers or 5,000 kilometers in a year of I would say, fuel. Without paying for fuel. Soorya EV is also purpose-built for ride sharing. We understand the needs of the segment. There is an operator needs, which means that it has to be a plug-in play vehicle. All the tech needs to be built into the vehicle. Today, most of the vehicles in the ride-hailing, ride-sharing segment depend on a mobile phone for the tech, so we are building a vehicle with all the tech built into the vehicle. Drivers are looking at total cost of ownership and low, cost per kilometer per seat kind of of a vehicle. So we are building a vehicle that would be able to offer the lowest cost per kilometer per seat in this segment. And passengers are looking for comfort and affordability. So our vehicle would be air conditioned, but because it's an 8-seater, the fares can be much lesser than a regular taxi. It's been very challenging to build a vehicle like this, but it's also been very exciting to bring a vehicle into the market. It's taken us 5 years to get to the stage of just getting into prototype production. But what is very encouraging is the number of inquiries that we have got, not only from the Indian market, but also from markets in the developing world and the developed world. So even though the vehicle is not yet prototyped, we don't have a prototype ready. We already have inquiries for about 20,000 units, worth about 200 million. So it's a very encouraging start for us.
Perfect. So good, I think, yeah.
Can I jump in if
yes,
it's
please.
possible? And maybe what I wanted to say that I think it's really important when it comes to shared mobility, and especially in emerging markets, what is going to really make a difference, the improvement in the battery technologies. So I think it would be good to hear from Log9. What do they think? What will happen? When are we going to really see this incremental change of the battery technology? Because I have following industry from 2010, and we had so many announcements about different batteries that are coming out, but everything has stayed in a laboratory level. Nothing was really adapted to the mass market product that could be produced. I have explored also graphene as an opportunity, and I really consider that this might be the next big thing. I know there are challenges because the graphene, when it's being produced, if it's inconsistent and then you have a different in the batteries, this could really make a problem. So the production of graphene itself, it's a problem to have the stable batteries. And I'm following the market closely, but so far I don't see when are we going to face this incremental change that would really make a difference. And it would be so much easier for the shared mobility and the vehicle that you're creating, Christie. It would be like really a boom that we need in the market.
So Ankush, the question has been directed. Do you see any advancements in battery technology, battery chemistry, which can at least address the mass market segment for ride hailing, both for commercial vehicles and for passenger vehicles, right? I think for commercial vehicles, at least the use cases can sometimes work in today's technology. But again, for passenger vehicles, it's well beyond the range. So again, Ankush, the difficult question is over to you.
Thanks, Monika, for the question. So, see, both the segments are like totally different. So one is like the passenger segment for B2B application, or like another one is for the B2C application, right? So definitely there has to be some collaboration between the battery manufacturers and the OEMs as well, right? So if we understand the problem well, we can design the battery pack according to the requirement. The solution that Log9 is providing is, first of all, the fast charging solution, and the second is high cycle life, right? I think these are like the two major issues or like the parameters that people are facing all over the world. And talking about tropical condition that India has, like the high temperature conditions, right? So Log9 has designed the battery pack, the cells, according to that tropical condition as well. So our cells can go like between the range of like minus 45 to 60 degrees, 65 degrees. So there is no impact, no thermal runaway in these cells, even at like higher temperatures of like 200 and 200 plus temperature band. So definitely there has to be a good collaboration between these two parties, the OEM and the battery pack manufacturers. Whenever OEMs think of putting up a powertrain, it has to be in a voltage band which enables the fast charging as well. So if you take in recent example of any four-wheeler in the segment, people are utilizing 92 volts powertrain, right? And if we talk about like fast charging it in India with the current DC, it's not possible to complete charge the battery 100%. So there is a big good collaboration between these two partners so that they can eventually come up with a solution in the market. And the second point is people don't know the residual value of the vehicle that they have. And to that, what Log9 as a company is coming up is a buyback guarantee on the vehicle, which ensures that there is safety as well as buyback on the purchase of the vehicle. So with every vehicle, we give a buyback, cashback, so that after the usage of the battery or the vehicle, Log9 will pay them the amount, whatever is the residual value left in the battery capacity. So we are taking these two or multiple points into consideration to make market more accessible to these battery packs.
And if you don't mind me again doing a follow-up to you, Ankush, we read a lot about new battery chemistries, technology. There's lithium-ion now, there's sodium-ion, maybe solid-state batteries. Are these technologies more amenable to some of these extreme use cases? And how near-term are these? Are these still 5 years away, 10 years away, 2 years away? What are some of the things you're learning, right? Because again, whatever you talked about will give us some more incremental benefits, but for us to leap forward to the next set of ranges, maybe it's a different set of chemistries, right? Maybe it's a different set of input materials to drive this.
So silicon based is different chemistry, then sodium based is a different chemistry. We hear a lot about these chemistries, right? But nothing has come up on the commercial scale till date, right? So we definitely see there is a verge of around like next 2 to 3 years or like 4 to 5 years for sodium and then silicon respectively to come into the market. Definitely one single solution can't be given to for all the applications. So it will be very much dependent on the application, what sort of chemistry will be a good fit for the use case. So once these chemistries get commercialized, then we can definitely think about utilizing those as well.
Cool. Let me go to Christie. Again, I wanted to reflect back again, and you made a reference to this in your introduction, but if you can get a little bit more specific about the kind of use cases you think will be more prevalent and how some of those use cases will actually overcome the challenges of battery range, which is currently prevalent. And from that point of view, what are you seeing, right? Are you seeing battery manufacturers step up to the challenge? Is there fundamental engineering needed in the vehicle itself for it to solve some of these problems?
Yeah. See, this is a challenge that we have been focused on right from the beginning. One is we realized that for the segment that we are catering to, the last mile mobility, which is a fleet segment, charging downtime is always going to be an issue. Whether it is half an hour or 1 hour or 2 hours or 4 hours, it is loss of business, loss of revenue for them. So we realized that, that can't be a solution. You can't have a battery that is going to charge in a minute or 2 or 5 minutes or whatever it is. It is going to be a challenge. It's going to take a long time. And the other issue in most of the countries, especially in the developing world, is the fact that high voltage is not going to be available for charging vehicles. It's normally high voltage is only available in industrial, corridors. It's not available everywhere. And third is with the kind of density of vehicle population, you can't have a pileup of vehicles waiting to get charged. It's not going to be very feasible. And real estate is also very expensive for charging of vehicles. So we need to look at multiple solutions. And if you look at in the developing world, we're used to actually, getting our drinking water in canisters, not on tap. We're used to getting our cooking gas, again, in cylinders, not on tap. Whereas the Western world are already used to having everything on tap, whereas the developing world already has a system of swapping canisters or swapping cylinders. So swappable batteries is something that we focused right from the beginning. At that point of time, the tech was not available. The market was not ready for it. There were no players in the market. But today I would say that there are many more players, and swappable batteries is gaining in momentum. Not just in the two-wheeler segment, but also in four-wheelers. In China, for example, most of the taxis are now switching over to to swappable batteries. Of course, Neo at the higher end also has swappable batteries. So swappable batteries, and in India also there are no players that are focused on swappable batteries. Building a swappable battery ecosystem is also, especially for the fleet segment, is a lot more feasible because the routes are quite defined. So it's much more easier to kind of, build a swappable battery ecosystem. The other advantage with swappable batteries is the fact that it can be recharged using solar energy. And there's a lot of solar energy available in developing countries. So that's a part that we have been looking at, but we also realized that in developing countries, one solution is not going to work. You need to have multiple charging options. So for our vehicle specifically, we have, the regular charging with a fixed battery. We have the swappable battery as a store of energy, so that you quickly, charge the vehicle. And we also have a solar roof that can provide some power. Now, when it comes to battery chemistries, especially in countries, situated in the southern hemisphere, the challenge with heat is going to be the challenge with hot temperatures is going to be a challenge. And we realized that LFP batteries are more stable, are more, suitable for countries in the developing world, especially in the southern hemisphere. They're more affordable. You don't need cobalt. You don't need, nickel. You don't need other materials. And LFP batteries are also much cheaper than the other battery chemistries that are available in the market. Of course, today there is a lot of development happening in batteries. People are looking at solid state batteries. In fact, solid state batteries are operating in EVs here in Singapore. It's from a company called Bolero. They have Blue SG electric vehicles that fly over here. One disadvantage with that particular battery is the fact that it has to be, it operates only in a particular temperature band. So it has to always be charged, or it has to always be running. So it's not really suitable for all applications. So from our point of view, we would now like to see standardized batteries coming out in the market. So we're also building our vehicle in a very modular fashion, so that we have a fixed battery which powers the vehicle, and we have swappable batteries as a store of energy. We are hoping that the swappable batteries, would be standardized over a period of time, so that it's like swapping cylinders, a cooking gas cylinder, or swapping a water canister. So challenges, one advantage with multiple charging options is the fact that you can then ensure zero downtime for charging, which is very critical for the fleet segment. Not so critical for the passenger car segment, where you can actually charge your batteries overnight at home. So these have been the challenges with regard to battery and getting an ecosystem that would be able to supply us, that would be able to recharge batteries. That's a challenge, and that's something that we are beginning to see a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, lots of interesting points. I'll just again probably Ankush redirect one to you, and then I'll get Monika in. Ankush, lots of interesting concepts I think which we discussed. I know you mentioned fast charging. I think Christie also mentioned battery standardization and battery swapping, right? So where do you see the interplay of these three trends, right? Do you think this is something, or what of this, which use cases will use what kind of fixed battery versus swappable battery, and what is needed to build an ecosystem in India? Because again, it's only recently that the government has started encouraging swappable batteries, at least for two-wheelers. Most of the swappable battery ecosystems in India are three-wheeler focused. I think out of the 10 OEMs in India who do two-wheelers, I think only one or two are doing swappable. So in general, India has been a little bit behind, right? So where do you see this evolving, and what's your point of view as a battery manufacturer from a point of view of both fast charging versus swappable? And do you ever think we'll get battery standards done in India?
So talking about like the battery technology and the advancement that we are having in India and across the globe. So we can see every month there is a lot of development happening on the battery side, on the cell side, right? So everyone is trying to push or to energy density and the power density of the cells, right? So going back to the fundamentals, right? So why we are pushing to increase energy density, and why we are trying to push the power density? So the main reason is, so once you increase the energy density of the cell, eventually your battery pack weight will reduce, right? You have good amount of capacity with a reduced battery pack weight, and at the same time you get good range as well. And talking about the power density side, whenever there is a high power dense cells, right? So you can fast charge the battery packs more than 1C or 2C power rates, right? So eventually, the all over world, what we are doing, what the people around are doing is improving these two factors, right? And then talking about what we are doing at Log9 is mostly working on the cathode side, making manganese-rich cathodes, which eventually will help to increase the energy density, increase the power density, as well as reduce the battery pack weight, and which eventually will help us to give more range in terms of overall GVW of the vehicle, because battery pack capacity is one of the battery pack weight is one of the major parameters where we can see ranges going up and down. So definitely there is a lot happening on that. And then talking about the cycle life, with these cells, you get a very high cycle life as well. So what we are guaranteeing right now is 10,000 plus cycles. So you don't have to replace the battery pack. So that means like you get a vehicle, you have one battery pack, it will sustain till the end of the vehicle life. You don't have to do any replacements. There is no overhead cost as such. Then at the same time, we are also providing you the fast charging solutions, which right now Bara DC chargers in the market are deployed. So we are utilizing the same Bara DC 001 chargers in the market, and we are capable of charging our two-wheelers within 15 minutes of time and three-wheelers within 35. And talking about the four-wheelers coming up, we are the charging time will be around 45 to 50 minutes, and with a good range of around 90 to 100 kilometers. So that is the sort of solution that we are providing into the market, with which we think swapping is not required at all. Swapping, it's not sustainable. You have to burn a lot of cash. Instead of one battery pack, you have to keep 2x of the battery pack capacity, not 2x like 1.7 or plus, more than that. So for that, comparing to that solution, that is what we are bringing up into the market as a fixed battery with fast charging, high cycle life, no replacements, and a buyback warranty.
Cool. Let me get Monika in. I think we've discussed like two use cases, right? One is the commercial use cases of shared mobility, which is last mile delivery, where at least we see some adoption of four-wheeler electrification. And then there's the passenger car segment where there are still challenges, right? So again, two questions are related with the segments, right? First, for passenger cars, as an investor, would you put more money into electric buses versus people who are trying to build vehicles? And do you have a point of view there? And then for commercial vehicles, do you see that to be a segment which is likely to electrify faster than, say, the passenger space and shared mobility?
When it comes to investing money, I think, yes, from a perspective of investor, it's a lower risk if you're investing in this public mobility segment, in the electric bus segment, because this is going to be one of the fastest growing markets that we are going to see when it comes to electrification itself. When it comes to passengers vehicles, I think that you of course had newcomers. You had Tesla, you had NIO that was making really a difference. And now you have all of the automotive industry, all of the big players that are following up and that have clear goals, that have a lot of money. And I think the time for a newcomers to jump into this game will be much harder at this moment than it was, 10 years before. So in that regards, from a perspective of investor, I think it's a really lower risk if you're investing in the segment of electric buses. And also from a perspective of investor, shared mobility, even autonomous vehicles, although it's a long term, especially with autonomous vehicles, it's really a long term, but this is something that, is our future. So probably as investor, this would be the balance, where to go and what to invest in the future. And I'm sorry if you could just repeat the second question.
No, the second question I was saying in terms of commercial use cases for electrification of shared mobility, right? Would that be, in your light, a less risky or a higher risk investment? Because in India, we are seeing a full ecosystem who are building out both three-wheeler, two-wheeler and four-wheeler last mile delivery kind of vehicles, right? Is that a place where you would see more adoption, more viable use cases? Because remember, that's again point to point, not necessarily has the complexity of range and all of that. Is that something you would see more adoption for electrification, particularly when it comes to four-wheelers?
Yes, definitely. So the last mile delivery, this is something that is a growing segment and everybody is going into it. And even the shared mobility segment, it's something that we are going to see more adoption because people don't want to own vehicles anymore, especially young people. For them, it's just a matter of transportation. So in that segment, even the shared mobility, I believe is the future. The only question with this shared mobility is how to untangle those problems of range, how to untangle like exactly what we thought. Those vehicles are being used 24/7. So how to untangle the fact that, okay, you cannot put the big battery inside, but you need a range to be able for that vehicle to run constantly. And I would just like to address some questions were piling up in the Q&A. I'm not sure if it's time now, but maybe all of this is connected. So I would just like to address one of them. So I really believe that there could be a circular economy when it comes to the battery segment. So the batteries that you're using in the premium EVs, those batteries can really have a second life, and maybe they are not needed for recycling immediately. So one of the portfolio companies where we as a fund actually invested is connected to these second life batteries that are then being used for another application. So okay, you have solar and you're going to fast charge the swappable batteries into this solar system that you're going to have charging station, but you're going to need probably some kind of battery that is going to be used as, collecting the energy from the solars. And also, even the batteries that are being used in the cars that use low voltage powertrains. So if we are not running the cars on the high voltage, but low voltage powertrains, you could use the second life batteries into those cars. And this is a really good opportunity to make those vehicles cheaper for emerging markets, because with a low voltage powertrain, you could use those batteries that were used previously in, let's say, premium cars. Now you can use them for another 10 years in the low voltage shared vehicles that are being used in emerging markets. And then later on, they're going for recycling. So we are prolonging the life of the battery, and this could be a good use case and a good opportunity. Probably for the battery that you were planning in those in the car to be like swappable, this smaller segment of the battery that is swappable, I really believe that maybe, even those ones could be used from the second life batteries.
Cool. Thanks, Monika. I think we'll probably transition into the questions. So I think it's for Christie. I'll give a question and then add one question from the Q&A. I think as a vehicle manufacturer, right, for shared mobility, right, what are some of the biggest, I would say, help or ideas you need implemented from the ecosystem for you to be successful? And then related to that, a question I think from Lokeshwar in the panel from the audience as to when can we see the Soorya EV available in the mass market, right, for sale? So again, both of them are probably linked to each other.
Yeah.
So Christie, over to you.
So I'll answer the second question first, because that's something that, every day I wake up and I wonder, when are we going to have when am I going to see the vehicle out there on the market? I didn't expect it to take so long. As like most entrepreneurs, we are very optimistic, but I was also focused, on getting the right product into the market. So the right product market fit is very important for us to be successful. We were not keen to just bring another electric vehicle out on the market. So we didn't go the route of taking an existing chassis and then, electrifying it or making some shortcuts and trying to, get a vehicle out on the market. We're very focused that when you bring out a vehicle into market, it has to be very successful. So today we have the right architecture in place. It's a very unique vehicle architecture. And we also have the suppliers in place for most of the components that go into our vehicle. We are kind of redefining how the vehicle is going to be, also manufactured. Like IKEA, redefined furniture making. We are kind of redefining how this vehicle can be manufactured. We don't intend to manufacture most of the components. We are sourcing most of the components from the market. So our focus is on the design, the engineering, and then supply chain management. Supply chain management is the biggest challenge. Today most of the when I started off, of course, we were looking at low voltage architecture, and we didn't have low voltage motors and drivetrains in the market. we were looking at swappable batteries and it was not available in the market. Today, most of these suppliers are available in the market. The only challenge for us when it comes to swappable batteries is that we would like it to be standardized, because once it is standardized, then availability is more widely available. It also becomes much cheaper. But we can't wait for the batteries to be standardized. So we're kind of having a very modular architecture which can take in different battery pack sizes. But that's our challenge. So when would we like to have a vehicle in the market? Today we are kind of ready, with the tech. So in 18 months we can have the prototype ready, and and 6 months from there we can actually get into mass production. So the challenge today is for me today is to first get the first batch of prototypes out into the market, and getting the battery supply in place. That's the only challenge that we face today.
Cool. I think there's a question on Lokeshwar, and I'll just read it out and probably add a sub question to that. And let me just direct this to Ankush. What should be the policy changes required for development of battery changeable technology and faster adoption of BEV? And I would add the question to what will it need or take for India to be manufacturing this, right? Both batteries and in the future also cells.
So, first of all, talking about the battery certifications, right? So we ourselves are working very closely with the government organizations to set up these protocols, which should be stringent enough to make sure like what all batteries are going out in the market should be of good quality, should sustain in the temperature that we are right now in, be it like on the north side of the India or like on the southern side of India, or the humidity conditions overall that we have. So these battery packs should sustain in all the way from like throughout the conditions, right? That we have in India. Second thing is right now people are getting the subsidies on overall kilowatt hour battery pack that they have. So instead of that, what we are pushing up is instead of that, it should be very much dependent on the cycle life as well. So if you have a 2 kilowatt hour battery pack today, and then your 2 kilowatt hour battery pack. So for example, taking an example of our two-wheeler. So our 2 kilowatt hour battery pack can sustain up to a life of 10 years, right? And then if the cycle life that the per cycle degradation is too less as compared to any other chemistry available in the market, be it like LFP or NMC. So instead of the subsidies that are there in the that are being provided should be more dependent on the cycle life and the energy density both, instead of being just on the capacity of the battery pack. So these are few things that we are pushing up to make sure like the best cells or the best battery packs come into the Indian market, so that we have very less fire incidents as well in the future.
Yeah. Cool.
Maybe when it comes to policy, I would just like to point out that it's really, we are not going to see incremental changes if we don't have governments that really decide, okay, this is the way we want for our country to go, and these are the priority for us. If you look at one of the examples in Europe, Norway, they did amazing change when it comes to policies for the electric vehicles. Norway is actually the only country where at the moment EVs are considered mainstream. So it's not that, when it comes to number of EVs and number of people being used, so really we came to the point that electric vehicles in Norway are mainstream. For them, as a wealthy country, of course, it was important to push for the use of electric vehicles for private use. So it was not so much focused on the shared mobility, but it was more like private use and to really push people to use electric vehicles. And they made it crystal clear, if you're buying a Ferrari, going to cost you way more than any other electric vehicle that you would be buying. It would be like you could buy 10 electric vehicles, 10 most expensive electric vehicles instead of one Ferrari that is not like the most expensive Ferrari, but they made those policies that way. Even like buy some kind of Porsche 911 or cars like that, this would be impossible to import in Norway when it considers the price. But then also when it considered to regular gas-powered cars compared to the electric cars that people were buying, there was really an incentive. Electric cars were cheaper. Okay, they made also the infrastructure, so the whole governance was around making the electric vehicles mainstream. And I see that, this could even happen in emerging market, but on a different scale. Like example, we have in a QEV, the bus that we developed for our partner in Philippines, Get. Now there is 100 of those buses driving around Philippines, and there is more and more jeepney drivers that want to use those electric vehicles because for them, economically, it makes sense. You use for 100 kilometers of driving with a gas-powered jeepney, you use $20. For driving 100 kilometers with electric jeepney, you use $2. So the mathematics is definitely there, and this could be really improvement of the lives of the drivers because they could earn more money. Again, the prices of the tickets could be lower, and everybody could be happy in the end. And I think this really requires a push from the government, because also government in Philippines decided we are definitely going electric. We are going to change those jeepneys because they are polluting heavily. It's not good for the environment. It's not good for our people. And then they draft the policies that push this forward. So I really believe every country is different. So every government needs to draft something that would make a huge impact for their environment and to see what is the most critical part they need to untangle.
Thanks, Monika. I think there is a question which I'll direct towards you since you brought this up, right? From Sunena in the chat window. She's asking for second life of batteries as battery technology gets better, right? Do some of the use cases for second life batteries disappear if batteries get more efficient, right? Or will there always be use
No,
cases?
I believe that, still you're going to have only the total life of the battery is going to be longer, let's say. So, okay, if we have a better batteries, then, probably their first life is going to be longer, or maybe it's not going to be longer because we are going to use them in the vehicle that Christie is developing, we are going to use them more. And then after 10 years, they would be deployed still in some kind of second life application. So in that regards, it would just improve the way we use it, but still there would be a problem of second life batteries. And what do we do with second life batteries? And do we use them in second life or we immediately recycle them? Also, I think that one of the questions was related to, we don't have a standardized batteries. So this could be a problem. I think when it comes to second life batteries, you need to consider that you're not going to use the whole battery pack. You're going to go down to the battery module, and then those battery modules could be assembled to a different application. So if you assemble them to the storage system, for the end user, they don't care what is behind the storage system and what kind of modules you have in this storage system. Okay, maybe for the car application, that's a bit more tricky because the cars are developed differently. But anyhow, I don't see that there is going to be standardization of the batteries itself. And there is always going to be this needed adoption for the second life. So, okay, you use a battery pack of a Tesla, you disassembled to the module level, and then from this module level, you assemble maybe a battery pack that is going to be used in a low voltage vehicle, and you sell to that manufacturers that is producing thousands of low voltage vehicles.
Cool.
But
So
this will require a lot of circles, a lot of connections, a lot of cooperation between different companies, and it's not easy. And we are still not sure what is actually the right solution and what is the way to go.
Cool. If you don't mind, I'll just direct Kapil's question to you, Christie. I know there is some healthy skepticism on swappable batteries, particularly for four-wheeler use cases. I think Monika touched upon the standardization issue, but where do you land? I know you seem to be the most optimistic of the lot on this, right? But do you see progress in the next 3-4 years, and what will it take to unlock this?
Yeah. When we talk about swappable batteries, and normally when you look at passenger cars, I think it's not a right fit, because swappable batteries and personal cars, is a concept that people will take a long time to get used to. But when you look at fleet segment, the focus is on affordability. The focus is on total cost of ownership. The focus is on cost per kilometer per seat. So there is no kind of personal attachment to a vehicle. So swappable batteries will work for the fleet segment. Swappable batteries will not work very well for the personal car segment. So let's not get into this debate whether swappable batteries, will work or not work. I'm saying that it may not work for the passenger car segment, but it will work for the fleet segment. Because there is no personal attachment to the vehicle. The focus is on affordability and cost per kilometer per seat. Now, swappable batteries, if it has to power a vehicle directly, then there is going to be a challenge. Like for example, NIO has swappable batteries. So those batteries have to be built specifically for NIO. Of course, in China now the passenger cars, the fleet segment, the taxi segment are beginning to use swappable batteries, and they're trying to standardize those swappable batteries. And there are multiple manufacturers of those taxis in China. But that will be a challenge, because trying to get all vehicle manufacturers to adopt the same swappable battery is going to be a challenge. So we worked around this issue by having a fixed battery in a vehicle, which runs the vehicle, and we have a swappable battery only as a store of energy. So when you look at us, when you look at our vehicle, like I mentioned earlier, it's a very unique vehicle architecture. The swappable battery does not run the vehicle directly. It's only a store of energy. So it works very well in our vehicle because it's only a store of energy. It doesn't operate the vehicle directly. So because it is only a store of energy, it can be modular, and it can be, designed such that we can, make use of different types of swappable batteries into our vehicle. Now, we worked around all these constraints that are going to be out there in the market, so that we can launch our vehicle now, not later when everything gets standardized and it's available in the market. So for example, we are also looking at using swappable batteries that go into 2- and 3-wheelers into our vehicle. So because they don't run the vehicle directly, they just operate as a store of energy. So I think people understand the concept well, they will realize that swappable batteries can work in a vehicle architected where you have a fixed plus swappable battery architecture, designed with a fixed and swappable battery architecture, but they may not work very well when you look at, the swappable battery powering the vehicle directly. Hope this answers, the doubts that are out there in the market.
Cool. I'll get to, in the interest of time, I'll just get to a couple of other questions. I think there's a question on hydrogen, right? Do we see this as something which is likely to disrupt the trend, disrupt the space over the next 5-10 years, right? I don't know if anyone, Ankush or Monika, you want to take that?
I can untangle that because in QEV we actually work on development of a hydrogen platforms, and there is an issue with hydrogen, and this is storing the hydrogen itself and charging the hydrogen. So in that regards, it's probably more complex than electric vehicles itself. But I really believe that hydrogen could be a good use case for long distance and heavy duty vehicles. So when we started developing the hydrogen platforms, we had in mind heavy duty vehicles that really require long range, because of it's not so much long range, but they use more battery because those are like heavy vehicles and they are working constantly. And we also consider this as an application for the long distance commute with buses. And in that regards, it could work, because then it would be like with heavy duty vehicles, okay, you need to, they need to operate on certain field, construction work. And when it comes to, let's say, managing the charging and all other difficulties that you're going to have, the same is with long distance bus travel, because again, they are going from one point to another point. So there is not needed hydrogen infrastructure all around the city, but in specific points. And in that segment, I think it could work. Having hydrogen being used on, let's say, more B2C level, and in regular cars, I don't see really that happening. But in specific applications, I think it could be really the right solution.
Cool. I have a question from Ashish, but I'll quickly answer this. I think there's a question on what will be the key driver to push adoption in India, given our energy mix and dependence on oil. I think the answer is very simple. I think it is ultimately going to be total cost of ownership of the vehicle, right? And to be fair, our energy mix as a country is shifting. I think we're already at 25% plus renewables, and we will move to probably 40% in 10 years. I think there will be more innovation in the space in general for more usage of solar power, right? Particularly as utility companies go to microgrids and more distributed generation and distribution. So I think, again, India will be one of the few markets where it will still continue to be total cost of ownership. But a decade from now, I think, like in a lot of European countries where it's also the environmental benefits of it, which encourages the younger generation to use and adopt these vehicles, we'll see that coming. So again, a short answer to the question. I think there is a question on in mature markets, there are a lot of startups who are manufacturing EVs or batteries. In India, it seems like startups are just middlemen between OEMs and end customers. I disagree with that a little bit. I don't know if Ankush or Christie want to step in. I see a lot of startups who are trying to build their own vehicles, who are trying to manufacture batteries, and who are trying to build a full ecosystem around it. We are probably 5 years behind China. I won't doubt that. But again, given all the policy incentives, the PLI schemes, the FAME 1, FAME 2 subsidies, I think there is enough motivation both from the government and also from the ecosystem to create an indigenous ecosystem, and which is why the electric vehicle story in India will not just be make for India, but also make for the world, right? So again, I am cautiously optimistic, and I would not dismiss the fact that we are just working as middlemen, buying platforms or bikes or scooters or vehicles from other countries and just selling it here. Any parting thoughts from the panel members? I think we are nearly out of time.
So I think, yeah, just to add to the same point. So if you'll see, like 5 years back, we didn't had any supply or like any manufacturer in India, be it like on the controller side or on the motor side, be it even the chassis, right? So we didn't have many manufacturers who knew how to make chassis completely for electric vehicles, or the powertrains for the electric vehicles, or the battery packs for the electric vehicles. Now, since these days we can see new OEMs, new startups coming up who are developing the controller units as well, the BMS as well. Till date, we were importing the BMS from China, Europe, for in all these countries. But these days, now we have startups in India who are working on the vehicle control units, BMS units, then the cells as well. So we have now cells manufacturing line also coming up in India. Log9 being one of the biggest manufacturers for lithium-ion batteries in coming days. So we are coming up with a 50 megawatt-hour annual line for the lithium-ion batteries. So definitely there is a lot of scope and a lot of work being done on the startups part, being supported by the government agencies as well, to support these initiatives of Make in India and promote the manufacturing in India completely into it.
Thank you. I think with that, we're out of time. Back to you, Gautam. I think it was a very interesting discussion. Lots of discussion on the use cases, lots of discussion on battery standards, discussions on fixed versus swappable batteries, and fundamentally the fact that if you need to design vehicles which operate in these use cases. So I think that's it. I think we are done. We don't want to disrupt your conference too much by going behind time. So at exactly 3:30, I'm handing back.
Oh, thank you. I couldn't agree more. All I could say is it was a very insightful and engaging session, and it was a pleasure and a privilege to hear you all. Our guests and I have been hooked on till the end and have taken home several nuggets. And also thank you to the leaders in the audience for joining us and for staying till the end, and for always sharing excellent questions. It was a pleasure to hear Barnik, Ankush, Monika, and Christie. And I feel a lot of people will take a lot home from this. So looking forward to meeting you once again very soon.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.